Golgotha. There we go. Okay, so we know that as a baby becomes a child, it will first walk, then talk, then think. And these three steps or stages correspond to three of the great revelations during human evolution. Those are first the Ten Commandments, which came during the sentient soul age and corresponds to when a child learns to walk. The mystery of Golgotha corresponds to when a child could talk, but not yet fully understand. That would be the time of the intellectual soul. And thirdly, Christ in the etheric, when with our thinking, we can be fully conscious as a thinking being that can venture even into understanding karma and throwing new light onto the Gospels. For this is the age of the consciousness soul, when we can learn to know the human being in our entire being, to perceive ever more deeply. And of course, this is the task in the age we are in now. So we often hear the expression Christ in you, especially if you go to the Christian community. We might picture this incorrectly as my ego is told, hey, get out of Dodge, in order to make room for the Christ to be where my ego was, that is, inside the astral, which is inside the etheric, which is inside the physical. These three sheaths for the ego are what we often identify as who we are. Well, if this is the goal, then there will be billions upon billions of naked egos hanging out somewhere in the universe. We might better picture Christ in you as Christ becoming the companion of our ego. Companion is the term Rudolf Steiner used for us as we go through this age and the next, the sixth age, when a small group will attain to the necessary brotherhood that can carry to the future epic. Christ was once in the flesh, in the physical. He showed the way forward for us, that in our future, we too shall come to a time when we can consciously go through death and ascend to a life where our etheric body is now our lowest bodily member. For this to happen one day, evolution must provide a gradual way towards it. And anthroposophy is this way, for it loosens through its meditations and eurythmy the etheric body from the physical. We might conclude that this is bad news for our physical body. For, as Steiner says, as this loosening continues, the physical body will wither. But we must come to see our evolutionary journey in our physical bodies as something that must come to an end, just as annual plants that we have in our gardens are now in old age during the Michaelmas season. But for our human evolution, this is a good thing, especially if we are able to gather the fruits from this journey in the physical. Gradually, our loosened etheric will be able to have living thoughts. Today, the etheric being in the physical brain, we're bound to just having physical thoughts from our physical senses, and these Steiner calls our dead thoughts. Christ will be active in the etheric for the next 3,000 years. We are loosening our etheric to join Christ in the etheric. Christ I'm sorry, what changes will occur over these next 3,000 years? It will be a calling to us to focus not on the human physical body, but rather on our etheric body. The physical was necessary for the development of ego consciousness. For this, our body took up space that was separate from the space of all other beings. As our etheric body loosens, we will understand a different reality, and that is that this physical separation was possible due to an illusion. And even subatomic physics is really close to revealing a part of this illusion in that, we as we drill in with a microscope from what we see molecules, and these are bouncing around in largely empty space. We go inside the molecules and we see atoms, and these are moving around in largely empty space. And we go into the atom and we see that the electron, the proton, and the neutrons, all the space that they take up is such a tiny amount that over 99.99994% is empty space. And then we go inside each of those and we find subatomic particles that we call dimensionless, popping around in empty space. Christ is now Lord of karma because he is now in the etheric, and because the etheric has no such boundaries as we have in the physical, we can now know karma. We are coming to a time when we can even preview it, meaning if I'm about to do something, I'm going to get a flash of the karmic results of that action if I do it. So knowledge of karma will motivate humans towards spiritual perception, in part to know how to compensate for past deeds. What is still coming will bring dramatic changes to the physical and to the social life. And we already see this. So I'll quote Rudolf Steiner on this. The quote begins, "The time is coming when human beings, when they feel depressed and miserable, will increasingly find the help of their fellows less important, less valuable. And this is because the force of individuality, of individual life, will count for more and more, while the power of one person to work helpfully upon the soul of another, which held good in the past, but will tend to constantly diminish. In its stead, the great counselor will appear in the etheric form." So note, Christ is not the great warrior, but in our time, the great counselor. And Rudolf Steiner said, the best advice we can be given for the future is to make our souls strong and full of energy, so that with the increased strength, we may realize the newly awakened faculties given to us for knowledge of this great counselor. But in our times, instead, we seek passive entertainment. Even if we don't experience the etheric Christ in our current incarnation, knowledge of it will help in our next. He is now the merciful judge of our karma. He knows what it is to be human because he became human and was tempted. Those who have quoting Steiner now, those who have thoughtlessly passed through this third great revelation to mankind, that is Christ in the etheric, given through spiritual science, cannot gain this experience after death. For the Christ event must be prepared here on earth in the physical body even. Those who go through the gate of death without giving even a glance into spiritual science during their present incarnation will have to wait until the next before gaining a right understanding of the Christ event, end quote. Herein lies the importance of the physical body, the fruit harvest for our next stage in evolution. Now, 2 years ago, Michael Howard intended to speak to us about a lecture. He ended up doing a workshop instead, where Rudolf Steiner addressed this future. And this was in a little booklet called Towards the Sixth. And now the booklet says Towards the Sixth Epoch, when it should have said Towards the Sixth Cultural Age. This is GA 130. And by the way, Michael Howard will be here again in November, and I hope everybody can attend that. So this Steiner lecture described how the love and brotherhood to be developed in this sixth post-Atlantean cultural age will be the foundation for the sixth great epoch. Out of this love, our ascension can begin. And so this is love for the other, not love in general, but this real brotherhood, this agape love. And so when we can attain this love, then our ascension can begin. And towards the end of the sixth cultural age, sexual procreation will come to an end. Come to an end? Yes. You see, every 350 years, the time span of the soul's bond with the physical body becomes 1 year younger. So today, the soul guides the physical while the physical impresses the soul up to age 27. By the year 2230, this will be 26. And by the year 5700, it'll be 14, and puberty will no longer happen. Humans will have to find another way to be present on the earth for that last cultural age. And what happens in that seventh cultural age is very disturbing. This is what the book of Revelations describes as people who are lukewarm with little motivation other than egotism. The seventh cultural age will also be the golden age of transhumanism, as it will lead to the war of all against all. And soon after this war, the moon will reunite with the earth to ensure no physical life has remained. Steiner pleaded with his members, that's us, to be prepared for this future. How could he expect us to prepare for this? Rudolf Steiner mentioned several kinds of spiritual beings who are willing to help us. And I'll name some: the Vulcans, the spirits of darkness that Michael drove down into our consciousness back in 1879, and those who will be upon the human stage of Jupiter. And Rudolf Steiner spoke about these three qualities that we can use to begin that work, and that is faith, love, and hope. And I'll begin with faith. The father of religious faith is often said to be Augustine, who lived in the 4th century. He moved us from the knowledge of God to faith in God, so that the path to freedom would not also be the path to destruction. It appears this gift of faith has been handed down to us through tradition. Oddly, though, it is not for us to decide whether to lay aside faith or not. Faith is a question of life-giving forces in our soul. The important point is not whether we have a belief or not, but that these forces, expressed in the word faith, are necessary for the soul. For the soul that is incapable of faith it becomes withered and dried up. What Augustine gave was, I believe what I know for certain, and not what it later became, which is, I believe what I do not know. Today, we still think that is the meaning of faith, and we have the expression blind faith. But when the word pistis, as in the book Pistis Sophia, was used in olden times, and today we translate it to the word faith, it meant, I have faith in what I know for certain. Knowledge for them was the only foundation for faith. Without the forces of faith, our way in life would become undermined by fear and anxiety. It is through the forces of faith alone that we can receive the life which should well up to invigorate our souls. And this we need for the future. Our faith body exists within our astral body, and it works upon our etheric. Next is the love that we find as part of our etheric body. Someone incapable of developing the force of love, their inner being also becomes dried up and withered, as an egoist does, for example, in only loving money or self over others. Real love is given away without any loss. Love has no bookkeeping, no financial ledger. Love is a living force that stimulates deep in our being, keeping it awake and alive, an even deeper force than faith. It acts within our etheric body, thereby adding meaning to Christ in the etheric and to the word agape that we hear described in John chapter 21. Consciousness of the etheric is the counterbalance for our technological age that seeks to equate humanity to a machine. And now the third one, hope, whose forces are within the physical body. If I have sown seeds, I know that next year they will come up. And oh my God, I forgot to plant my grass seed today. Anyway, would I bother with seeds if I did not have such hope? Life would be impossible in the physical world were not future events to be preceded by hope in such a rhythmical way. It is precisely in physical life that we need hope, for everything related to the physical is upheld by hope. Without hope, nothing can be done. The forces of hope are connected with our physical body. Whoever is unable to hope is always despondent about the future. This ends up affecting their physical appearance, especially in appearing old and wrinkled and bent over too early in life. So I'll close with this. According to Steiner, this power of hope arises through the certainty of knowledge gained from the laws of karma and reincarnation. Already there is a tendency in human beings to produce withering bodies, which in future will become increasingly rickety, even in their very bones. And so new medicines will be needed that will be able to plant marrow into bones and bring forces of life to the nerves. But this withering, however, we shall come to know about. Through this, we shall come to know about life-giving forces, and above all, about these forces of hope. Trying to continue, faith, love, and hope constitute three stages of the essential being of man. They are necessary for our health and for life as a whole. This is the age of the consciousness soul. If one's three sheaths are not permeated, warmed through by faith, love, and hope, then our ego cannot develop our consciousness soul. And of course, we need to develop the consciousness soul to be able to move on to spirit, self, life spirit, and eventually spirit man. For faith, love, and hope are the basic forces of our astral body, our etheric body, and our physical body. Christ, in contradistinction as to the suffering of Christ on Golgotha, is appearing now as Christ triumphant and Christ the Lord of karma. And so this will continue, as I said, for 3,000 years. And I think I will come to a close, but just to say that this faith, love, and hope are the forces we're going to need, not only for the rest of this epoch, but or certainly for the rest of this epoch as we go through this cultural age and then the next up to 5733 and then the last to 7893. And so I will pose some questions for discussion. What happens to our etheric body and our physical body during these future cultural ages? Do you know? How do we prepare for these changes? How do we help others to prepare? And how does the Ahrimanic incarnation affect our lives of today and of our civilization in the future? What do you think we are to wrest from Ahriman in order for us to be able to do what is necessary in the future? What are we to develop in order to become proper angels for those who will be upon the human stage of Jupiter? Does the mystery on Golgotha, this question, could it have been avoided, Christ's death, and then would there have been a mystery on Golgotha? Could we have stopped Judas from betraying Christ? And I bring that up as a kind of question to ask, is evil and things like transhumanism actually necessary in our future, just as what Judas did was necessary so that the mystery of Golgotha could take place? So personal questions for us to discuss also are, have any of you had one of these premonitions of karmic consequences? And do you think the implementation of karma is now different with Christ as Lord of karma than it was before? So I'll stop there. I have a few other questions, but I think I've
Okay.
quite enough. Yeah, Dick.
Yeah, well, I have a question, and I've always been perplexed by the 28th week of the calendar of the soul.
Okay.
And okay, so it says, I find my being vivified anew, widened to far horizons of its own, filled with new force, the radiance of my thought coming from soul sun power can solve the mysteries of life and grant fulfillment now to wishes whose wings have long been lamed by hope. And I just have tremendous difficulty with that. Wings long been lamed by hope.
I agree with you. I have great difficulties with that as well. It implies that hope cut, lame those wings. And and so the only way I've been able to work with that is that it's the lack of hope that has done that. But he doesn't, I don't know the German to read it, and I don't know if you'd agree with that interpretation.
The thing is, It's, I mean, the German is dem Hoffnung, which that's hope, shown die Schwingen lähmte, so that the wings lamed. So it's on some level it's there. So anyway, it's just something that presents itself
Yeah,
as a mystery.
right. Good to have mysteries in the Michaelmas season.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's mere hope? That it's more than just hope we need, not just hope? That's sort of how I've worked with it.
And I've done something similar where faith means something much different than blind faith.
Mhm.
And I think there's something about this word hope that it can have different connotations. Um, yeah. And is it real hope that you have, or is it, boy, I hope that it happens, but you really have doubt.
It's interesting for the eurythmy. There are some eurythmy exercises for resilience, which
Mm,
also makes me think for now and into the future, we're not just doing it for now, we're planting seeds for later. And the three are hope, love, and reverence. So we have the hope and we have the love, and I'm thinking about reverence. And in a way, I think if you have reverence, you do, in a way, you have faith because,
right. I was just going to say that.
yeah.
There's this little booklet that I used,
Mhm.
and it's December 2nd and 3rd, 1911, given in Nuremberg. But yeah, I think that's correct, Joyce, that this word reverence is related to this word faith. Any thoughts, Barbara?
No, I don't have any hugs, but it was excellent. That was a great, great talk. And I was expecting something else. I was expecting Michaelmas, so now I'm trying to figure out how to weave the work that we're doing at this time of year into this, because honestly, I feel that probably, you probably, I don't know. I don't know what you do, but my sense is that we may suddenly wake up one morning and decide to give a lecture on faith, hope, and love. But it doesn't come from nowhere. We are guided. We are all guided in subtle ways, even in our smallest decisions and actions. And so my guess is that unless you had, this stored away in your little pocket and you just thought to bring it out this time, or if you really thought that this was a time of year for us that we really needed to think about these three, and see yeah, if this is particularly appropriate for now.
Great question. And I will be honest, I did think of this as a kind of Michaelmas talk.
Great.
And I
So
do
that's,
think it's
yeah,
this time of year that it's really especially hopeful. I mean,
yeah.
hopeful.
Okay. That was a good slip.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, Steiner in this book says, never say faith, hope, and love. Don't ever put it in that sequence. It must be faith, love, and hope.
Mhm.
That they and the way that Joyce said it is also okay. Hope, love, reverence, or hope, love, faith,
Mhm.
because they pertain to astral, etheric, and physical.
And there's always a discussion among the eurythmists where hope is placed and where yeah, it's I've heard it different ways. I've experienced it different ways with different eurythmists, which because when you're doing the resilience exercises, Some will end with the awe reverence. Some will end with the hope. So I'm trying to think, if you flip it around, Andrew, say it one more time. If you would do, Rudolf Steiner suggests doing,
Well, I was picking up on something Barbara said. She said faith, hope, and love.
mhm,
And Steiner said that is incorrect. Don't ever put them in that sequence.
mhm,
Of course, Barbara wasn't referring to,
sure,
Election, no, no.
but and that's how we commonly hear it. And Steiner was saying that's how, yes, we commonly hear it, faith, hope, and love. But he's saying we want to try to hold to it as faith, love, hope, as astral, etheric, physical.
okay, perfect.
Yes, Dick.
But something just came to mind in Tennyson's poem, "In Memoriam," Arthur Henry Hallam. I faintly trust the larger hope that slopes through darkness up towards God.
Slopes through darkness.
This
Oh,
up towards God.
wow. That's beautiful. Tennyson?
Yes,
Yeah.
in his poem "In Memoriam."
Wow.
And Andrew, the quote you read from Rudolf Steiner, who's when it said that we will rely less on one another and
Yes,
more on,
that was very interesting.
and more on
Yeah.
our companion,
That's
Christ.
from here.
That's from the same one. Okay, thank you.
Now what, I'm sorry, Joyce, I interrupted you. Did you, how did you hear him say that? Say it again. That in the future, what I heard, and see if this is what you said. What I heard was that we will come to need to depend on ourselves and not so much on the other. That was like a huge change for me to hear that.
That's not,
No.
I don't want to say that's untrue, Barbara. That is correct. But people are going to need, and so have needs. And he's pointing to the great counselor, Christ as the great counselor.
Right, yes.
And that's what we need to begin to, and that's why I brought up this word companion,
Mhm.
that when you see Christ as a companion, then he can be that great counselor.
Mhm.
But if you completely just with your ego and say, I've got Christ in me, I don't need my ego anymore, then I think that's a false picture. That is, I think, sort of taking an Eastern the old Eastern picture that the ego is evil and we have to suppress it. And in the West, we took up the ego, and that is a fundamental difference between the spiritual paths of East and West today. Still remains that way.
Mhm.
So,
Joyce?
so at this time of the year when we are trying to tame the dragon within,
Yeah, within, yes.
and we probably really can practice more and more the faith, love, and hope. Did I do it in the right Did I do it in the right order?
Yes, you did.
So
I have faith in you now, Joyce.
I don't know, it might be misplaced. So I'm thinking that we do need to have these three qualities or practice: faith, love, and hope. Because without that, how do we go on? I mean, how do we face the dragon within? And then I was thinking about the St. John's Gospel and also the St. John's Gospel by Rudolf Steiner, and how we have in a way, I hate to say a model or an archetype, but of a human soul, a human with a purified astral, I think is, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah.
And that's no easy task. I mean, for me, thinking of that, that's a long way off for most of us, I would imagine. But I think that that's a bit of taming the dragon, do you think?
I do. And I don't think it's as far off as you may think.
Okay.
I think this is already going on
Mm.
and we just aren't aware, really. And I think, when we've passed over and we look back, we will be able to see such things more clearly, but then we'll be able to help those who are here that we're connected with.
So, Andrew, can I just read you that, all of us, that verse, that that verse, Michael verse, and see if when we say this verse, asking Christ, asking Michael at this time for certain things, if we can read in this verse, asking him to help us with each, this faith, this love, and this hope. I wonder if it does, if it can work into it.
Which Michael verse are you going to read?
Victorious spirit, flame through the impotence of irresolute souls. Burn out our egoism, ignite the compassion, that selflessness, the life stream of mankind that wells up as source of spirit rebirth.
Right. And you have in there much of what, in a verse form of what I brought,
That's what I was hoping. Yeah.
Yeah, this egotism that we've got to root out, this, the selfishness, they're all mentioned in, this faith, love, and hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, in my own life, I can see these three at work, in the way that I go through life in this difficult time. The election time, the time of extreme storms that decimate different groups of people, their lives. There's so much. And that if we do not carry these things, as you say, what kind of burden will we be left with? What kind of physical body will we be left with? What kind of, how can we go out into the world and do the work we need to do if we don't use these as our guidepost, as something that we have to wake up every morning and ask, maybe through saying this verse, ask for that to come to us each day.
Very good.
Because I think, again, it's hard to make things work on the moment. They have to be, your characteristics have to be so grounded in you, so an integral part of you, that you live out of them. You don't have to think at every instance, well, if I give money to that guy, do I really, it has to come. Yeah, I don't know. Speaking of money in the Waldorf school, I wonder if we could set up a little fund for them, asking anybody who has any RMDs that they have to take, if they could just give them to them at this time and get a slight benefit for themselves. Oh no, we're not supposed to have any benefit. I forgot. Never mind. No financial benefits. I wish there was something we could do as a group.
I do too, but we're as poor as a dormouse in our
Yeah.
own society branch here, and
Mhm. I meant as individuals. Mhm.
yeah. Well, that's also hard to organize, and a lot of people might say, why should I give to that when, there's all these people in North Carolina that need money,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
and probably by Friday there'll be a lot of people in Florida too.
And speaking of that, I spoke with my friend this afternoon, and she lives in the Tampa area, and she went to the airport to take a plane out. She got to the airport, her plane was canceled.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And back to her house, no shelter because she's too high up. She just has to stay in her house.
Or go to some shelter, community shelter or something like that.
No, no, she says there's nothing there. She's not
What?
eligible. Yeah, she says she's not eligible for that because of where she lives, because she's too high up.
Well, let's hope she survives this. And
Yes.
Kirsten, we're just ending. Sorry.
Oh, you're just ending. Oh, sorry. I just saw the email. Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Hope it was good.
So I did record this. Um, so you can see the recording because we had so few. And oh, by the way, everybody, I hate to tell you this, I forgot to stop the recording when we started the discussion. So I can edit it and just cut when I stop, okay? And so you won't be in this. And